Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me on episode 4 of season 2 of the Show About the Show podcast. I could not be any more excited to welcome today's guest, 1995 American League Rookie of the Year with the Minnesota Twins, as well as former Major League ball player and friend of UFC President Dana White. We'll get into all of that and so much more. Ladies and gentlemen, Marty Cordova. How you doing, Marty?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. You were. Let's talk a little bit about when you got drafted. You actually started in 1989 with in the rookie league with the Elizabethan Twins. But can you talk about the process of being drafted, kind of growing up? Was baseball always the sport that you kind of gravitated to, or did you know at a certain age, like, hey, I'm going to be able to make money doing this?
Actually, it was not even anything at all like that. I grew up in Las Vegas, and the baseball was football was my sport at Gorman, and it's now national powerhouse from football, a little bit of baseball and basketball, but it really was. We didn't even have a field. We used a local park that didn't even have a home run fence. So baseball really wasn't a thing in high school. It was more football. And then I decided that it was safer to play baseball. So I went on to but I really wanted to go to college. I didn't really want to be a Major League Baseball player. It just seemed so far away that it wasn't something I really took too seriously. Fast forward, I had Steve Sachs syndrome. I couldn't throw the ball. I ended up quitting UNLV's team, went to Orange Coast College where Coach Mike Main coached me there. I ended up leaving the team there as I was a shortstop, and I kept throwing the ball away, and it just wasn't fun anymore. So I left that team. He ended up having me to come back because there was nobody else to play. I committed probably a record for errors in junior college that year, but I hit like 500. I could always hit, but I just couldn't throw. I could catch the ball, but I couldn't throw. Long story short, then I went on, was drafted by the Twins. Larry Corrigan drafted me. I really wasn't even that excited to be drafted. They kind of had to talk me into it, and they had to give me money for scholarship to go to college because I was really more concerned about school than I was playing baseball. That being said, I ended up signing with the Twins, went to Elizabeth, and played there. Again, they moved me to third base instead of shortstop, but I made a lot of errors. I just couldn't throw the ball straight, but I could hit. Then the next spring training, the brass drives around in the minor leagues, and they kind of just overlook what's going on. And we were playing, the low A team was playing the high A team. I got a ball hit to me at third base, and I threw it over the fence on top of the clubhouse. And that the next day I had an outfielders club in my locker, and I was never an infielder again from that point on. But I still, to be honest, I always had a throwing problem, even from the outfield. If it was something I had to think about, then I would have trouble accurately hitting the cutoff man. But if I just got it and threw it, then it was not a problem. It was more just a mental thing for me. So to answer your question, yeah, I was drafted by the Twins. Really didn't even take it quite that seriously until like maybe my third year in, that I was like, well, if I'm going to decide that I want to do this, I better either get serious about it and work out in the off season and stop just considering going to college. And then I gave it one more chance, and then ended up having a really good year in 92, and then decided that it was a possibility that I could play in the major leagues. So I started to really focus on working out more, eating right, and practicing, taking it more seriously.
Yeah, because you started in Elizabethan in 90, in 89, and then you went to Kenosha in 90, and then you spent 2 full years in advanced A-ball at Visalia. Was that really when that kind of happened for you, when you started taking things seriously in terms of eating right and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, 91 was the year I had a really terrible year, and they had brought in Dave McCarty and Scott Stahoviak, these big first and second round picks. And I was like, yeah, this isn't really maybe for me. Because I really wasn't that passionate, to be honest, about it. And then I remember Steve Little was the manager there, and he's like, look, you better change your tune if you want to play. You've got talent, but you got to take it seriously. And if you come back next year and continue to be take it this not seriously, you're not going to be around. So I joked, and there was a documentary being done at the time at the end of the year, and I was I had long hair at the time, and I really didn't care about it playing ball. I just really liked to just have fun, and I wanted to go to school. And I said, maybe I'll come back a different player next year. And then that was the year I came back. And then luckily Midre Cummings was traded to the Pirates, or I might not even have had a starting job in 92. And then when I did, our team was really good in Visalia that year. And we had a great team. We ended up going to the playoffs. I had a really great year that year. And then things just got more serious after that.
So one thing I've always kind of wondered, back then, when in spring training back then, how much interaction did you guys have? Obviously, more specifically in 91, with any of the guys on the big league roster, because obviously the Twins ended up winning the World Series that year. Was that kind of one of those moments where you were like, okay, now I can see how professional these guys are. They take it seriously. I need to whip into gear.
No, nothing that cool. No story like that. They separated us. The minor leagues was a world apart from the major leagues. You weren't even near them. You didn't see them. They didn't come around. If you were in AAA, you might get called up to play in a game or two, on the road or something like that, where you'd be around it. I was never exposed to the major league side of it until after the 92 season, when I was put on the 40-man roster. And then the next year I was invited to spring training before 93 season. So that was the first time I'd ever even met a major league player, to be honest.
Who's the first Twins player that you met, the first Twins big leaguer that you did meet when you got on the 40-man?
Yeah, I don't, because when you're on the 40-man first time, you're still like a long way away from. You're just trying to protect you. They think you might be a prospect. So really, even like Kirby would probably didn't know who I was at that point. Just an A-ball guy going to go to AA. He's a cool guy, but he's more interested in dealing with guys that are going to be on the team and coaching them up than a guy that may never even make it to AA or out of AA. So really, I was just, I think, I don't even think I played in a game my first time on the 40-man. You just go up there, you're there for your mandatory 15 days, and then you go back down and start working with the minor leagues. And even, well, actually, I take that back. I was only on the 40-man twice, optioned down twice. I still had another option left because I didn't get optioned my final time. But yeah, to answer your question, I really didn't. My first time in big league camp, it was just more like, you just get to see what it's like. You're not really a part of it.
You had mentioned two names that I think a lot of Twins fans like myself would probably remember, in Stahoviak and Dave McCartney. As minor leaguers, I mean, they were first rounders and stuff, but were you able to bond with them kind of coming in and being like, hey, you guys are new here, let me kind of show you what's going on?
Exactly opposite of that. When they came in, they were college players that were very more polished than, like, I was drafted at 19. They were drafted a little older. And so they came out of Stanford and I believe Creighton. And when they came in, they were like the bonus babies. They came halfway through the season. They were studs, they were going to be these great players. They were given a lot of money. And so they kind of were on a whole nother level of the way they were treated from the management to, the brass came to see them all the time. They really didn't have time. We talked and stuff, but they were like on a different trajectory. But then after that next season, when I had a good year, and then I kind of caught up to them a little bit. McCarty was ahead of me a little bit. Stahoviak and I ended up playing in Salt Lake City together, and we became very good friends. McCarty and I are very good friends too, but he was a little farther ahead, and then he kind of moved on right when I got there. Then he was down in the minor leagues, then I think it was traded to the Giants or something. So we were friendly, but not close as Scott and I were.
You talked about 93 in AA, you were with the Nashville Express, and the 94 you were with Salt Lake City. Can you talk about going from a player who you mentioned kind of didn't even want to be drafted and had no interest in kind of playing baseball, to making it to being a AAA player and being on the cusp of potentially being called up to the majors, and what that was like?
Yeah, for me, I'm just more of a practical person. Like it was like my job, right? So I went to AA. I was going through some eye problems. I was trying to wear glasses, so I didn't have a great year at AA. And then I ended up getting contacts for the next year when I went to AAA, and it was much better. I could see better. And then I broke my wrist in spring training when Dave Winfield was on the team and Kirby Puckett. It really badly. It broke it completely in half, my ulna. And I really just wanted to play because the Salt Lake was going to play in Las Vegas like the month into the season, and I really wanted to play in front of my hometown. So I was determined to get back and to play in front of my hometown team, and family and all that, and friends. But the doctors were like, "There's no way you're going to recover this quickly." But luckily, it was broke really cleanly in half, and it healed, and I recovered a lot quicker than they expected. And luckily, I got back for my first series was in Las Vegas against the team here in Vegas. And the first game I was 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, and it was just not a very good game. And then the next game I remember I went 5 for 5 with a cycle, and I think I had 2 doubles and then a hit for the cycle. So it was really cool to do that in front of family and friends.
Absolutely. So in 1995, you end up winning the Rookie of the Year, which we'll get to, but let's talk about April 28th, 1995. That's your major league debut. Talk to me about the experience leading up to that, getting the phone call, your kind of reaction, who you talked to, and then actually going from AAA to the big leagues and what the biggest kind of adjustment was.
Again, I've been a very fortunate, lucky person. I have to admit, a lot of the cards fell in place for me. Granted, I played well, but also just luck happens to some people, and I was very fortunate, and I really do say that with all truth, as I was very lucky. So what happened was, in the end of AAA season in '94, that's when Major League Baseball went on strike. And so there was I would have been called up in '94 if there was a season, but there wasn't. The World Series was canceled that year. So spring training the following year, there was no spring training, as there was replacement players. So we were kind of on hold. Everybody was waiting. Fortunate for me, again, for the situation, is Shane Mack was offered 4 years, $16 million deal to go to Japan to play, which opened up left field for me. So he left to go play because he got guaranteed to make that, it was a lot of money back then, which opened up the position for me. So then Tom Kelly was a very hard-nosed manager, as everybody knows, and he played me every game of spring training, every at bat, which is crazy. I had like 130 at bats in spring training, which nobody has at bat.
No.
And he's like, he's going to earn this. So I played every game, every inning of every game, road, home, didn't matter. Had a really good spring training, and then I realized I was going to make the team and have a chance to be the starting left fielder. And then Eddie Guardado, who's a very, very dear friend of mine, even to this day, we talk all the time. Him and I were the only rookies that year that broke camp, and so it was him and I. We had a pretty veteran team, but we just weren't that good. It's hard to explain when you look back at it. It's like the team wasn't that bad, but we just weren't very good. We ended up losing like 100 games that year, but. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of how it wasn't like I went from AAA right to the major leagues. It was a strike. It got earned the job in spring training, and then made the team just as the only rookie position player.
How did you feel about TK's decision to play you so much in spring training? Looking back on it now, do you think that helped kind of set you up for the success you had, not only your rookie year, but also your second year and going forward in the major leagues? Or were you at the time thinking, whoa, this is a lot. I don't know if I can handle all this.
No, I was young and I was strong at the time, so I didn't mind. I mean, it was, people were like, "My God, he's playing the shit out." Sorry, because he's playing you a lot.
You're good.
He's playing you a lot, and he's testing you, because TK was that way. Nobody was going to just limp on the team. He was going to do everything he could to break you down and to put you into pressure situations as much as possible to see whether you had what it takes, because that's the kind of the way he managed. He wasn't a confidence guy. I'm going to build his confidence. He's a tough love guy, and he would break you down in it, and he would separate the weak that way. So if you couldn't handle his pressure, then he would want you on the team.
So your first game in Major League Baseball as a pro was, ironically enough, against one of your future teams, the Baltimore Orioles. It was Friday, April 28th, 1995, at the Metrodome. There was a crowd of a little over 21,000 people. Talk to me about the nerves or the emotions that you were feeling going into that game.
Well, to be really correct, the first game was on the road. We had one game on the road in Boston. It was our first game. Right. Right. And Scott Erickson was pitching for us, and I can't remember who was pitching for the Red Sox. If it was somebody good, they had a really good team. But I do remember, because I'm very mentally tough normally, and so I was just like, I'm not nervous. I'm not nervous. This is just another season. It doesn't matter where you're on TV. It's no big deal. Just play the game you've always played. You'll be good. But I was so nervous that my eyelid kept twitching involuntarily in my right eye. And I was like, oh my God, I'm really nervous, because I couldn't stop it from twitching. And I was, I hardly even tell it, it just came to me now. I hardly tell that story to anybody, but I was like, wow, I was really nervous, and pretending that I wasn't, because you just try to be emotionally strong. But even though when you're a little bit nervous and scared and fearful, because it is a big deal to be in the major leagues. That being said, I ended up going 0 for 3. We didn't even get 4. I didn't even get 4 at bats, because we got beat like 9-0. And I remember my third at bat, I had like a 1 ball, 2 strike, one and 1 count on me. And I was really nervous, and I try not to be, but I swung it in like a bad pitch on 1-1. And I threw the bat into the stands behind the on deck circle on our dugout. It went like 15 rows up. And I mean, I hammer tossed this thing. And, I remember I had to walk over there. It's a long walk to the on deck circle. And I'm like, I need the bat. Back then, now later on, they used to have 2 or 3 bats on the on deck circle to speed the game up, but I didn't have another bat. And I'm like, the crowd's booing me. I'm like, I need the bat, give me the bat back so I can have my bat. So they passed the bat down. They're just screaming at me as these Boston fans are crazy that they're killing us. So they're all happy.
Sure.
And I walk up there nervous as can be. It's a really long walk from the dugout in Boston to the home plate. And I end up next pitch, slider or something, and dirt swing, strike three. And I had to walk back to the freaking dugout, completely embarrassing as you strike out. And people are like, you didn't need the bat. You know, they ride you. I think I might even just gave him the bat to the fan and said, just give it to whoever had caught it. But yeah, that was my first game ever. And I honestly was just glad that it was over with and wanted to just move on. And then we got to go back to the Metrodome to be home. And then that next first game at home, we faced Ben McDonald, and I got my first major league hit off of Ben McDonald.
That game that you talked about, your major league debut in Boston, that was Scott Erickson did pitch. You were facing Aaron Seeley that day.
Okay. Yeah.
Aaron Seeley that day. Scott Erickson pitched for the Twins, Mark Guthrie, Carl Willis, Vince Horstman, and Mo Sanford.
Yeah. Yeah. We went through a lot of pitchers. They scored a lot of runs on us. I think we lost 9-0.
It was 9-0. The Twins got 2 hits. The lineup that day that you had some pretty good players in it. You had Chuck Knobloch, Kirby Puckett, yourself, Scott Leyes, who was on, obviously those other 2 gentlemen were on the 91 World Series team. When you came up, did they was it kind of a lead by example thing? Like, hey, we're World Series champions, we're professionals, we're going to show you how to be a professional, or is that something you kind of had to learn on your own?
Luckily for me, Kirby and I got along really well. And I was the number 4 hitter. So he hit 3rd and I hit 4th for most of the year. So I was thrown into the fire there, kind of like as his protection, which is a pretty tough order as a rookie that's got to hit behind Kirby Puckett, a Hall of Famer. And, you know, thank God Kirby could hit any pitch thrown over his head or that bounced, because if not, he would have never gotten at bat. He would have walked every time, because everybody would rather face me. And I knew that. And I enjoyed the pressure. I really did. I liked it. I wanted them to walk Kirby on purpose to pitch to me. It was just another RBI opportunity, the way I looked at it. So I never shied away from the pressure or from the challenge, because I knew one way or another it's going to happen. I can either go into it with the right attitude of, look, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to win, or I'm going to go into it afraid and I'm going to lose. Then I'll have regrets later on in my life. So I said, I'm not going to have any regrets, and I'm just going to go. And I was always that hard-nosed player. I didn't show a lot of emotion. People thought I didn't love the game, but I did. But I just didn't want to be that human scoreboard that was, you could look at the game, you could walk down the dugout and look, and you'd know who had a hit and who didn't. I never wanted to be that way. If I struck out or I hit a home run, I didn't really want anybody to know any different, because the season's so long and there's so much ups and downs that you can't be a consistent player if you're emotionally up and down like that.
So in 1995, you did end up, we mentioned it earlier, winning Rookie of the Year. You hit 272, 24 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 84 RBIs. When did you find out that you won the Rookie of the Year? And do you think that the fact that the Twins kind of struggled that year, and like you had said, Shane Mack had moved, allowed you to win that? Or do you think you would have maybe won a job out of spring training?
Well, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to win the job out of spring training if Shane was there, because he had earned the right to fail. So he was under still, like, I'm not sure if his contract was up, or I think his contract had to be up, or he was negotiating his contract or what, but he was still, you know, he was a very good hitter. He was a great 300 hitter at the time. So he was a proven veteran player. So I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So I was very lucky. As far as winning the Rookie of the Year, it was very close, because Garrett Anderson had a very good year, but he didn't play the whole season. He played like a month less. So if he had played the whole season and had the same stats, he probably would have won. It would have been very close. But because he didn't, it's, you know, you got to play the whole year to get the respect of the players. And there's a Rookie of the Year award voted on by the media and then one by the Players Choice Award. To me, the Players Choice one mattered more than the media one, because that's my peers. And I won both of them. And that one meant more to me. But I at the end of the year, it almost hurts you to be on a bad team. It helps you to be on a better team. And to be very honest, the Angels had one of the biggest implosions in the history of baseball. They had like a game lead going in that last month, and then they lost that huge game in Seattle with Ken Griffey Jr. scoring that run from Edgar Martinez double. So if they went to the playoffs, he might have won, because he would have been on a playoff team. And these media guys give that a lot of credit, just being on a good team, because they just think it's harder to perform on a good team, which I think it's easier to perform on a good team, because you got hitting's contagious, winning's contagious. Right. There's a lot less pressure when you're And the umpire strike zones back in the 90s was crazy. It was a big difference. There was a difference between the strike zone for the Red Sox and the strike zone for the Twins. And I'm not hating on, I loved all the umpires. I had no problem with them.
Right.
I'm just
Right.
being honest. If they had the case
Absolutely.
back then, they'd be like, oh my God, this umpire needs to get a new job. Because they'd call a pitch sometimes 3 feet outside. And if you looked at him and said something, one time we were facing Dennis Eckertley at the end of his career, and he was in St. Louis. And I can't remember what team I was with, if it was the Twins or it might have been the Twins at the end of my run there. But I went up to the plate and it was like a 3-run save situation. And there was one out and he threw a first pitch slider and it was like a foot outside and he strike one. I'm like, okay. And I didn't say anything. And then he threw another one and it was maybe say the first one was 6 inches outside. Honestly, the next one was probably a foot outside. And I looked at the umpire and I'm like, no farther out than that, right? I was being sarcastic. And he goes, son, that's Dennis Eckersley, a Hall of Famer up there. I suggest you swing the bat. And I'm like, well, no wonder he's a Hall of Famer. He's obviously got very good stuff, but if you give him a strike zone, the plate now is 40. And I said, he goes, the catcher sets up and he hits the mid, I'm going to call it a strike. And I said, well, then just set up in the dugout. And if he hits the mitt, then it's ridiculous. I'm being a smart aleck, but I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And that was always how it was with Maddox and other guys. If he just hits the mitt, they'll just keep moving out. Well, then why have a plate? Just have it just covered up with dirt and just let the catcher set up where he wants. And if he hits the mitt, it's a strike. It's just that ridiculous. There's rules are there for everybody, and they're not meant to be special for certain players. Same with Wade Boggs. LaTroy Hawkins was pitching when Wade Boggs was with Tampa Bay. And the first pitch of the game, LaTroy, and he's a really good friend of mine now too, he threw it right down the middle. And I don't know if Mike Durant was catching at the time, but he turned to the umpire and he's like, where was that? And the umpire said to him, if it's not good enough for Mr. Boggs, it's not good enough for me. And that's how the umpiring went back then. It was completely different than it is now. These umpires had no authority over them. And again, I'm not hating on them. They did the best they could do, but there were certain ones that just, they'd tell me, hey, well, you better swing the bats today because we want to get out of here. So that was very, very well known that certain umpires had huge strike zones, certain umpires didn't. Certain umpires were going to call a high strike, certain ones didn't, but they made their own strike zone and called however they felt like it.
Do you think that that's part of the reason that maybe a guy like Kirby became such a good hitter, because he knew that the umps were going to call things all over the place, so he kind of had to be ready to swing at anything?
No, not really. And if you think about what you said there, that'd be like saying, well, Marty, now you can just swing at a pitch over your head and hit it because they're going to call that a strike. I can't hit that pitch if I swing at it. That's why I don't. He was just so talented that he could swing at a pitch over his head and hit it and actually make good contact. You would never, ever tell anybody to try to hit like Kirby. That would be, you just dooming them. I'm not sure if somebody chimed in there. You'd have a terrible career. If somebody said swing at balls all the time and take strikes, you would have a 100 batting average. The whole goal was to not swing at balls and to only swing at strikes and hope that the umpires are going to call legitimate strike zones. And so that you have a chance to actually, hit 300.
Let's talk a little bit about your 1996 season, which statistically might have been your best season. You hit 309 with 111 RBIs, 97 runs scored, and 46 doubles. I remember being a 12-year-old kid in St. Paul that year and watching you guys play. It seemed like you hit a double every time you were up at bat that year. Can you kind of talk about that season, specifically hitting all those doubles?
Yeah, well, a couple things about that season was, well, first of all, Tom Kelly, back then striking out was like a sin. It was really bad. If you had 100 strikeouts, it was like, that was always my barometer. I knew if I didn't strike out 100 times, I'd probably hit 300 because that means I'm putting the ball in play hard more often than not. So my goal was to never strike out 100 times. And if I did, it was like embarrassing. Now it's like, that doesn't matter. It just matters your on-base percentage and your slugging percentage, which I get. It really, you can argue either way. But back then, TK would not play a guy that struck out because he would see it as, with a runner on third and one out with the game on the line, this guy's going to lose the game for you because he can't even make contact. You don't want that guy at the plate in that situation. So to me, it's almost like, well, if you want that guy because he has on base plus slugging, but in that, you'd have to pinch hit for him in that situation then, because he's going to probably strike out like a Joey Gallo. You might want him every other situation, but now if the game's on the line, maybe pinch hit for him then with somebody that can put the ball in play. I don't know what would be the proper way to do that. But anyway, to the point is he was really big on not trying to pull the balls, trying to hit the ball to right center. So therefore doing that, as I had a lot of power, but I had power to right center as well. So therefore I'd stay on the ball more, and instead of striking out more, I'd hit a lot of balls to right center or down the right field line. And then if a slider was hung or I was looking fastball, and I could pull the ball as well. But to answer your question, yeah, I was always trying to hit 300. That was my goal. I said, if I hit 300, I'll have a great year, because the power will be there because I'm hitting the ball hard.
And you actually didn't strike out 100 times that year. You only struck out 96 times that year. Did you feel like after coming off that Rookie of the Year, going into 96, did that winning that award, whether it be from the national media or the players one, give you the confidence that you therefore took into the 96 season and had your best season? Do you think that played a part?
Again, like I took this as like it was my job. It really was just like the next year is the next year. I didn't think of it that I didn't overthink it like that. I'm just like, it's my job. I have a lot of pride in my work. That's what a lot of people don't really get. Fans, they're really hard on players. They're like, they don't understand. We take this home, and it's really hard to sleep after you have a bad game. And it's really hard because you take it to heart. You've got family and friends and your own personal pride. That's a lot more than what a fan cares about, because he paid for a ticket and he's pissed off and doesn't think you tried. I'm like, believe me, these guys are feeling it way more than they're showing, because they're not supposed to cry on the field and throw the bat in the air and act like babies, because that's not how you're going to have a successful career. But right. That being said, is what really hurt me the most in my career, I feel, is at the end of that 96 season, there was a ball hit to left field, like very last week of the season. And it was a very close to being a home run or hitting the wall. And I always went after every ball very hard. I played defense. I loved playing defense. It was one of my main pride, was playing great defense, because I respected the pitchers. So I went back really hard on it, and I slammed on the brakes, and my heel hit really hard on my left heel on the warning track where it's that hard rubber. And I remember when I did it, I'm like, damn, that hurt. And I was limping a little bit, but it ended up starting, because when I went home, where I've known Dana White since I've been a little kid, since he's been 10 years old. And he was a boxing trainer. He was training Floyd Mayweather Jr. at the time. So he was doing boxing, and I've always boxed to get in shape. So when I went home that off season, I was doing 3 hours of 3-minute rounds, 30-second rest, 3-minute round 30 for 3 hours straight. And so I was jumping rope, hitting mitts, doing this crazy workouts, but my foot was getting worse and worse and worse. And then when I went to spring training in 97, my whole arch from my toe to my heel was completely black and blue from that, from the bruising from my plantar fascia tearing. And that got to where then I no longer had my speed anymore. I couldn't steal bases anymore. It took about 2.5 seasons for that completely to tear. And now my left foot, I don't have an arch anymore. A lot of people don't hear these stories, because I'm not here to complain. Fans don't want to hear about your problems. They don't want to hear that your foot hurts. They'll just make fun of you anyway. So I just played through a lot of pain. I played through times when I didn't even want to be on the field, because I couldn't stand for very long without crazy amounts of pain. And it wasn't fun to play. There was times I'm like, I would rather be anywhere than here right now, because it hurts so much just to stand in the outfield to shag. I'd have to sit down a lot. It was just not fun, because it's not fun to be in that kind of pain. And anybody that's ever torn their plantar fascia would know it hurts. And to have to run around like that in cold weather, fouling balls off your foot, just pounding and playing on turf, wearing spikes, that's why my career kind of went after that for the next 2.5 years. I couldn't outrun base balls that I would get infield hits on, not even close. I was an out. Doubles, I couldn't get a double anymore because I wasn't fast enough. I stole no bases, and my defense was not nearly as good as it was. So that was really one of the unfortunate things, is injuries happen, that took like 3 years to go away, and then it got a little better. And then when I went to Cleveland, it was back where I didn't have any pain to play anymore. And I started to play a little better at that point.
You actually missed, ironically, you actually missed 240 games over the course of 3 years because of back issues. Do you think
it wasn't back issues?
It wasn't back issues.
It was
your plantar fasciitis. Okay. Do you really think that that's kind of what really kind of derailed your career, maybe with the Twins, in terms of being a player who could get to that next level, maybe all-star level?
100%. If I didn't have that injury, I would have been able to run. I would have been able to continue to play that, because I had that ability of speed and power that is rare in the major leagues. And I played really good defense, and I really honestly took so much pride in defense, more than my hitting, so that it really got to where baseball wasn't fun. I couldn't run anymore. It was always in pain. So for those 3 years, it was just misery. I was not a very happy person on the field, and it affected my career there. And then, of course, I was back then it wasn't a lot of money at all, but to what the team was making, it was a lot for our team payroll was a lot. So to pay a guy that kind of money that's hurt, and then ended up being in 99, I kind of just went to as a DH that year, and Chad Allen played left field more because I ended up tearing my labrum on my right arm a little bit, and I had that bad foot still. So I had a good year. I hit like 285 that year, but I wasn't able to play defense. And I really enjoyed playing defense because that kind of takes your mind off hitting. And you can also do a lot of good things on defense. And pitchers like it when guys really take defense serious and make good plays for them. They love it. So like when I was in Cleveland, I loved playing defense, and the pitchers loved it because I'd dive for anything close to me, and I would make every routine play. I never dropped the ball. I never was lazy. I never didn't back up a base. I always played the game right, and I always hustled, period.
What do you remember? There were some highlights of the Twins teams in those years. There weren't many because they weren't, like you said, they weren't great. And us Twins fans who have been longtime fans of those mid to late 90s teams kind of know the pain that you guys went through. What do you remember about Paul Molitor's 3,000th hit in Kansas City?
Well, I remember it wasn't very good for me, that's for sure, because I kind of screwed him over a little bit, and TK was furious with me. Paul was hitting third, I was hitting fourth, I believe, and he hit his 3,000th hit was a triple. So now
we're right center field gap.
Yep. We're in Kansas City. He hits a triple. You know, there's all the fanfare. Everybody's out there high-fiving and hugging him like this. And now TK came up to me because I'm on deck. He's like, don't even think of leaving him out there on third base. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. You don't even think of it. So I'm like, all right. So now I'm like pressure on me big time because I don't want to leave him in there. So the first pitch I swing at, it's like up and in, and I get jammed, and I pop up to like right field, a shallow pop up, and it doesn't score him. The next batter strikes out or whatever, and then he doesn't score. And TK was furious with me, like I stained his 3,000 hit. And I felt really bad about that. And Paul and I were very good friends. And he even gave me his 2,991st hit. His last 10 balls, he put like in a little case and put the hitter that was off. And him and I were that close. And he gave me his like 546 double ball. These are two things that I still have, like one of my favorite things I have besides Muhammad Ali's signature. I don't have a lot of things that I collect, like Herbie Puckett, a couple of jerseys he signed and bats to me personally. But yeah, I remember it distinctly, not in a good way, because I wish I would have at least got a sac fly to let him score, and then everybody meet him at home plate again. Would have been a little better than to just leave him stranded on third base.
And 97 especially was a really bad year for the Twins. We won like 60 or 61 games that year. We lost over 100, but the bright spot in that was Brad Radke. Radke won 20 games on a 60-win Twins team. What do you remember about Brad's year that year? He made the All-Star game and went to Colorado.
Yeah, well, kind of after the 96 season, they got rid of Molitor, I believe. I mean, sorry, Chuck Knobloch at that time, and they went that, like the kids, they called it. I think we had like 14 rookies on the team that made it out of spring training. But if you look back at it, a lot of good players came out of it. AJ Przinsky was on that team. There was some guys that ended up being pretty good. Mays was on that team. Rookie year, there were rookies. Maybe Minkiewicz. There was quite a few. I'm sure I'm leaving quite a few guys off, but they decided to go real young, and with that comes a lot of hurt. You know, a lot of suffering. And I think Brad was a rookie. He was a rookie in 96, wasn't he? I don't think he was 97 rookie.
I think it was 95 was his rookie year, maybe.
He was rookie same year as me. Okay, I don't remember him. I thought it was me and Guardado, but maybe you're right. But yeah, Brad was just like the coolest dude. He hardly said 2 or 3 words a day. He was very monotone. He had the unbelievably great changeup, and he was just a guy that, like, he didn't it's hard to say this, like, he didn't get excited. Like, if somebody made an error, he didn't like flip out. You'd never know what was going on in his brain, and he just was steady Eddie, got the ball through strikes, and the defense really played well behind him, because he would done well with his pitch clock now, because he would get the ball and go, get the ball and go, get the ball and go, and not play around. And your defense always plays better when you do that. But yeah, I really like Brad a lot. We were very close friends too, and I was so happy for him because he's such a nice person. I was glad that he had the good success he did.
Yeah, and he's in the Twins Hall of Fame. I've met him a few times. His last game as a Twin was in 2002, and I remember the series in Oakland, the the American League Divisional Series. The Twins were facing Oakland. Radke pitched, I think, almost the entire 0-2 season with a torn labrum and shoulder issues. And you talked about how that impacted you. Can you imagine being a pitcher and going through that, and how tough Radke was? Did you kind of get glimpses of it back then?
Well, I can imagine it because I went through that kind of a thing where you're in pain all the time. And again, he's the type of guy that's not going to complain about it. You're not going to hear him make excuses, and even Eddie Guardado, who he used to throw 94, 95, and then he started having some shoulder injuries and not enough to have surgery, but enough to where he was like torn labrums, and his fastball now is 89, but guys will still battle through it. And again, I'm not saying we're any heroes or anything. We're playing a sport, but there's a lot of guys that are suffering a lot and in a lot of pain, and it sucks, because you just want to be healthy. You want to be at your full potential when you're playing. And when you're not, the fans don't know and they don't care. They just want to see you get hits, and a hit every night, not just one night. They want them every night because they're there that night and they expect you to get a hit. Doesn't matter if you got 4 the night before. And I understand that. And I'm a fan now of the Raiders, and I find myself trying not to do that, but I'm like, how the heck did he make that play? And I'm like, stop it. He didn't mean to do that. No matter how stupid the play seemed to be, there's emotion behind the game that's, I don't know, because I played high school football, and these guys are a whole nother level. And sometimes emotions get the best of them and they do something that you'd be like, how the heck would he do that? But again, I know he didn't mean to do it, and that the guy feels way worse than I do. I can promise you that.
The one thing Radke seemed to struggle with was the first inning. It always seemed to me like that first inning, he might give up a couple of runs or 2-3 runs, but then he would shut the other team down for 6 innings and give you guys a chance to come back and win. Was that kind of seemed like that was typical Radke? Was that something you guys kind of realized in the dugout? Like, okay, he gave them up early in the game. It gives us a chance to go back out there, tie the game up, or win the game.
I think it was the players that well, first of all, a guy like Radke, who had a lot of feel on his pitches, his changeup had to get comfortable. He had to get it working. And again, your first inning, you're facing their best hitters. So you're a guy that has a great changeup. Sometimes if you don't have your feel, and normally when you get your groove going, your 1-0 changeup looks like a fastball, and it gets them to swing when they're aggressive. But when the first inning, when hitters are more patient at their first time up and they're seeing pitches, they might be taking 1-0 instead. Later in the game, they might be swinging. And so now that 1-0 changeup that's down 3 or 4 inches that they normally swing at, they take, and it's a ball. And now like, oh, now 2-0, he's got to throw a fastball or a get me over slider or something, and then you can get in trouble. So I think it's a bad combination of getting your feel for your pitches, your off-speed pitches, and also you're facing the best hitters that are very patient at the beginning of the game because they want to work the counts more in the beginning of the game. So I think that's these things, though, these trends, the manager and the pitching coach, they are very aware of this. They're aware of like when we don't do well in the first inning, or there's some trend that's happening, and they try to, well, what can we do to make things different? Like they might say, okay, Brad, we need you to throw more fastballs in the first inning because your changeup's not on typically in the first inning. Well, then other teams will get onto that too, and then they're just sitting fastball, and Brad's not throwing 99 miles an hour. So it's just, you got to live and die with your strengths, and you got to hope that you can figure it out, because it's really hard to say, well, you're really good at doing this. Don't do this in the first inning, but then do it later. It doesn't work that way. So it's just, things happen in the game. There's some pitchers that the Randy Johnson, I hit like 450 off him. He even threw to Damian Miller a lot. And he told Damian, like, I can't get this guy out. It's just something you have. Like, and then some pitchers, I can't get a hit off that everybody else kills. So there's just weird things in baseball that just, for some reason, it's just the way they are.
So you actually ended up, after the 99 season, we kind of talked about the Twins were a really small market. Then they were kind of penny pinching. They looked at the success that you had early in your career, and they decided that, you were either out of their price range, or they didn't want to pay you what you thought you were worth. So in January of 2000, you actually signed a minor league contract with the Red Sox. You asked for your release actually from the Red Sox before the season even began, and you eventually played in 2000 for the Blue Jays. Talk about that experience with the Red Sox and why you decided to ask for your release.
Well, it really wasn't I asked for my release. I'll tell you, because I know we're short on time here, is that offseason I had options, and my agent was very good friends with Brian Cashman, and also the general manager for the Reds at the time, Jim Bowden, I think was the Reds GM. And so I had a guaranteed 1-year deal, say like 1.5 million, which was good money, but not crazy back then, to play for the Reds, or Dan Duquette had told him, look, he can come to Boston. We'll give him a 2-year deal. It was say like 2 years, $3 million, something like that. And Tom Gordon's going to go on the 60-day disabled list. We'll guarantee his contract then, have him come to spring training, blah, blah, blah. So he would give like his gentleman's word that I would make the team. And my agent felt comfortable with that. And so I went to spring training with them. And I even was hitting decent. Jimmy Williams was the manager. I was hitting like 400 at the time. And then like Trot Nixon and Jason Varitek and Nomar and these guys, I was friendly with them, was playing against them for a long time. And we were all cool. And they're like, where are you going to live in Boston? Have you thought about it? I'm like, I got a weird feeling. Something doesn't feel right. Gary Gaetti was on the team that year. And Jimmy Williams had wanted me to play first base because he knew I'd played infield early in my career, but I just couldn't do it. There's no way you can make a major league first baseman with throwing issues. So,
Right.
And Gaetti could play first base. And so anyway, he was only making like $600,000 minor league deal. So Jimmy Williams called me in his office and they're like, they're going to guarantee your contract. I'm like, I just knew something was up. So he goes, look, your contract is what it is. I don't get into that. He goes, but we're not going to put you on the 40. We're not going to guarantee your contract and put you on the 40 man right now. He goes, I know that's a shitty thing to hear. He goes, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you every game here on out, so that you can be seen by other teams and maybe you can get picked up by somebody else. He was Gaetti can play first base and he makes a lot less than you. So that's kind of where they're going. That being said, that day we played in Bradenton and the wind was blowing out from home about 40 miles an hour. And Coleman was in center field and it was a lazy pop fly to him and he nonchalanted it and it clanked off his glove and he dropped it. And now there was 2 outs still. The next ball was a pop up to like shortstop. Nomar turned and now the wind was blowing it and it was blowing farther and farther out. It was like a pop-up maybe to the grass and it started going out. We're converging and he slid knees first and I slid because I didn't want to smash him and he broke one of my ribs. His knee hit my rib. They tried to get me like on a stretcher out the field. I'm like, no, I crawled off the field. I'm like, there's no way I'm getting on a stretcher. So anyway, that being said, I couldn't even sleep. I couldn't breathe. It was really bad. So Jimmy Williams was so mad at Coleman. He's like, you messing around, got a guy hurt because he shouldn't even been out there, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, Toronto needed a right-handed hitting DH outfielder. And so I didn't let anybody know that my ribs were hurt that bad. So I went to it was either there or the Yankees and Cashman had told my agent, Marty's going to be the 5th outfielder and this could end his career because he might not play and he'll be on the bench and then it could end his career. Or I could go to Toronto where I knew I could get some at bats. So anyway, I went up to Dunedin to do batting practice, and it was one of the most painful things I've ever did because I had to take batting practice with a cracked rib, and it was ridiculously painful. But I ended up faking it enough to where I made the team, and then I just ended up having a terrible season there. I had like 245, and then I ended up Dave Martinez came on the team, and then I never played again the second half. But that being said, it wasn't that I was let go by the Red Sox. They didn't guarantee my contract. And then I got hurt that same day that they told me I wasn't going to be guaranteed. So it's just like, and again, what we're going to talk about in a minute is the media and people always get things wrong. Right. But the thing is, media doesn't care whether it's wrong or not. They just want to make a story. So like this tanning bed thing that I know you wanted to talk about isn't even the truth. That is not even at all what happened. And anybody that with a brain would know that that's not possible, number one. And number two, if they saw me, they would say that didn't happen to him, but it just became a thing. So I'll get into that story because I know you wanted to talk about it and I'm sure listeners will want to talk about it. And I've said the truth to a few times to people, but on a couple podcasts too, of what really happened. What happened was, we had a day off. Well, I was a veteran player with the Orioles. So Hargrove had said I could fly home to Vegas and then meet him in Oakland. So when I went home, there's a plastic surgeon, a friend of mine, and he had a laser hair removal thing. And I had a really bad ingrown hairs on my neck and it was killing me with my suit. And so he's like, look, I got a laser hair removal. I can remove some of the hair on your neck and on your face so it won't be so thick. And it'll help you from having these crazy ingrown hair rash. It's on my neck. So I ended up doing it and he didn't turn the laser on the right way. And instead of it's supposed to shoot cryogen, which cools your skin, and it burned me. So I had these quarter-sized burn marks on my face. So if you looked at me, you'd go, what? If he fell asleep in a tanning bed, why is his beard the only thing burned? Right. It was ridiculous. It didn't even make sense. But I just didn't. It was nobody's business. I didn't want anybody to know anything one way or the other, and I didn't want that guy to get in trouble for malpractice because I thought he was going to disfigure my face because it looked really bad. And when it burned, it turned into like black, looked like cigars were put out of my face because they were all like quarter size. Anybody that looked at it would go, there's no way that's from a tanning bed. They're quarter size burn marks, and they're all evenly all over his face. And
Right.
even like Jim Palmer's like, Marty, that's what, would you have your face lasered? And I just like, I want to talk about it. So one of the reporters just decided to go off the record and make, I was like off the record and I was joking. And I said, yeah, I fell asleep in a tanning bed. And he turned that into a story. And then Jim Rome made it a story. And then it just became a joke. And instead of like trying to deny it or fight it, I just said, I don't give a shit. You know, I'm on with my life. I'm tough enough skin. I just let people think what they want. Because, you know, once you start then trying to make it a bigger, deny it, or it just becomes a bigger story. So I just didn't care. And it became like, well, one of the stupidest injuries. But if it would have been laser hair removal, it would have been another stupid injury. So it didn't really matter what it was. There was no really one way or the other. So I just let it go and moved on with my life. And that was 20 years ago. And I don't even care. It was a really shitty year. I'm not going to lie. It was a really rough year. First of all, I looked like a burn victim. I looked like Freddy Krueger, and I was really concerned that I was going to be disfigured because it was that bad. I had to put like what you'd put on a burn victim, this creams and stuff to try to make it go away. And luckily I have like olive skin. So if I was more pale complected, it would be bad. And it would have been really bad. Anyway, so that's, people are curious, and I get it. Everybody's curious and they want to know. And then a lot of people like to make fun and take shots at people. And I understand that. I don't care. It's a long time ago, but I'm sure, like you said, some of your listeners would want to know the story, and I'm happy to tell the truth of what happened. It's 20 years ago.
Well, thank you for telling that. I'm glad you were able to set the record straight and set the story straight. Because, yeah, I don't know if I would be able to be that thick-skinned about it, but I'm glad you were.
There's nothing you can do about it. Once
Yeah.
the media runs with the story, there's no stopping it. Because and then they'll turn it into something worse. So it was just like, deal with it. I got a lot of flack. The fans were brutal. I mean, that was like fodder for them to make fun of me. It was brutal. But whatever, it made me a tougher person. And again, I really honestly, at the time, it was devastating. I mean, I went to home at night, like wishing that I could get away from this, but I couldn't, because I had to be on TV. I had to be there. I had to take my medicine. And I'm like, look, I chose to do this. I can't blame anybody. I can't blame that doctor for him screwing that up. I chose to do it. I didn't like having ingrown hairs. I made the decision. So live with the consequences. And I took responsibility for it. Like, I didn't want to blame him or malpractice, sue him or anything like that. It was more like, I didn't even mention his name. Nobody even knows the real depth of the story.
So I wanted to move to some fan questions. I know we're short on time, but I've got a question from Nathan on Twitter. Nathan wants to know, what was your toughest at bat, or what was your favorite moment as a Twin?
Toughest at bats were always against Pedro Martinez, because I never got a hit off him. I was like 0 for 24 off him, and he was just really good. I mean, a lot of people had that same story, but Matt Lawton was my really, really good friend as well. He had no problem getting hits off him, and Pedro hated him, and he drilled him on purpose that one game because he stepped out of the box, and he didn't like Matt because Matt hit home runs off him. Matt would flip his bat a lot. Matt liked to do that. Like, and I'd be like, Matt, don't flip the bat. And he's like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. And I'm like, I hit behind you, dude. Stop flipping the bat. I'm gonna get drilled.
I don't want to take one in the ribs because
Yeah.
you flip the bat. Yeah.
Actually, I didn't care, because if I didn't mind getting hit because I got on base. It's better than striking out, especially with 2 strikes. I would hope somebody would hit me. I didn't care. But yeah, Pedro Martinez was always a tough at bat. Kevin Apier was hard to hit off. Guys that had really good sliders for a righty were always tough. The guys that had good sinkers and then good sliders were always tough to get hits off of. The best memories I had was when I had that 5 games in a row hitting home runs. Was pretty cool, when you're just kind of in a really good zone and you're seeing the ball well. And I was really, looking back at my career, it's crazy that I could have had a 23 game hitting streak and a 25 game hitting streak, but then also I went one period where I went 0 for 35. And for me, it was always whether I saw the ball well. I had always trouble with my eyes. I ended up having LASIK surgery 96 season because I wore contacts, and I had gas permeable glass contacts that were hard, and they kept dropping, and I was always having trouble seeing at the plate. So when I could see the ball well and swing at strikes and not swing at balls, I was very deadly as a hitter. But when I would chase balls and take strikes, I was an easy out. So that's why I look at every great hitter, from Manny Ramirez to Tina Martinez, Paul O'Neill, especially Paul O'Neill. These guys knew the strike zone so well that they never swung at balls. and they had the confidence to hit 1 ball, 2 strikes. I like to put the ball in play early because I didn't have the most confidence in my ability to not strike out. So that therefore sometimes I put the ball in play softly, maybe early in the count when, and again, like now it would be nice to play today where you can swing 0-2 like you swing 2-0. They don't care. If you strike out, it doesn't matter. Just try to hit the ball 500 miles. I mean, if you hit 220, that's okay. When I played, if you hit 250, it was embarrassing. Like you saw 250 on the scoreboard, you're like, hurry, turn it. But now 250 is a good batting average. Right. It's not a terrible batting average. It's times have changed.
What current relationship, if any at all, do you have with the Twins? I'm sure you probably don't have one, but do you have any current relationship with the Twins?
Not the organization. I was friends with Terry Ryan and those guys, and I always was cool with the clubhouse and the guys and the people that were running the organization. It's just, and if I lived in Minnesota, I would have loved to have done things like Ron Coomer did. I probably would have gotten the broadcasting world. I did like that kind of stuff. I did like to talk on TV. I didn't mind doing radio stuff, but it just was like, even talking to them about it, they're like, look, you live in Vegas. We can have guys that live here. It's a lot easier. It's too expensive to have people come from out of state. So it just didn't really work out. But, and I always still, to this day, I always said, I'd love to do things for the Twins if they wanted me to. They just really haven't really reached out, and I'm not, I'm in Vegas. So, but we are having Oakland A's here. So I started a couple of companies and sold them after I retired from baseball. And so now I just recently sold 2 companies. So I'm kind of open for doing just passion projects now. And when the A's come here, I would love to do something to maybe get back in baseball a little bit.
That'd be awesome. I know personally, I would love to see you back in the game. Was Kirby your favorite teammate, or did you have another favorite teammate in your major league career?
I just had a lot of, like, Kirby was just so cool to me because he kind of took me under his wing and really taught me a lot about playing the game and was very instrumental in shaping my career. But I became really tight with this group like Jock Jones, Eddie Guardado, LaTroy Hawkins, Torrey Hunter. We were really close, and even to this day, like I'm on the board of the United Way of Southern Nevada here in Vegas, and on May 11th, I'm hosting a golf tournament here. And Jock and Eddie are driving out from San Diego and Irvine area to come, and it just driving in for that night, playing at that game and leaving. And I mean, that's how cool they are and how close friends they are. Yeah, Troy can't make it. He's coming here for Scott Erickson. Scott Erickson now lives in Vegas, and he's having a golf tournament on the 13th. So I'm going to do that with Scotty. But Scotty's coming out to mine on the 11th as well. So yeah, there's that core group of dudes that were really, really close. And David Ortiz is always one of the guys too. Such a nice guy. He only got to play with him a couple of years before he moved on to his Hall of Fame career in Boston. But
right. One thing in the baseball, at least as a collector, I like to collect cards and memorabilia and things. And as a collector, in the baseball autograph world, there's a thing called TTM, which is through the mail, which is where obviously fans send fan mail to players hoping to get it signed. I can attest personally that you are very, very good about signing fan mail. Has it always been that way? And also, follow-up question, what's the weirdest thing someone's ever asked you to sign, either in person or through the mail?
To the last question, nothing crazy. Nothing at all, really. Yeah, maybe like their arm or something, but something done, but nothing crazy. Everybody wants something signed that's like a card or something, a ticket stub or something like that. When I played, it was always hard because you're just so busy and you have a lot of demands on you physically, emotionally, and signing is hard. And that's why a lot of players have people sign for them, or they just don't sign some things because it's just hard. It takes a lot of time and you just don't have that kind of energy. Now I don't mind because I get cards sent to me, a few here at a time, a few there at a time, or someone will say, hey, I want to do a mail-in thing for you. And again, it's not any real material dollars. I don't really care about the money. It's nothing really, but it's just, I don't mind doing it. If somebody wants my autograph, happy to give it to them, so.
I want to talk a little bit about what you think of the current rule changes that Major League Baseball's had. We talked a little bit earlier when we were talking about Radke, and you thought he would do really well with the pitch clock. The pitch clock, the bigger bases, the banning shifts. Do you think that Marty Cordova in 1996 would be an all-star with the rules that they have in 2023?
I don't know. Who knows that? I mean, you can't really say that. The rules wouldn't affect me because I never got out of the box. I was one of those people that I always kept my foot in the box, and I was ready to go.
Right.
I was waiting for the pitcher to go. I never walked around. I didn't adjust I had my little thing. I did my little ritual, but it was very quick. And I like to be ready and focused and in the box and in the moment. As far as pitchers go, like, it's just a lot of guys have these routines that they like to, like LaTroy, for example. Man, he was a human rain delay. He'd get the ball, he'd put it in his glove, then he'd step off, he'd push his pants down with his glove in his hand, then he'd put his other pant down, he'd look around, then he'd step on the thing, then he'd look in, then he'd step. I mean, it was ridiculous. He was so slow. Right. And Steve Trapsell was even worse. He was a human rain delay. It was crazy. He would go 0-2 on every hitter and then end up 3-2 and then walk a lot of them and step off 35 times with a runner on first, to where literally in the outfield when he pitched in Toronto, I was like, let's go. Come on, let's go. It's ridiculous. And then he would get a lot of plays not made behind him because the infielders were flat-footed and they were not ready. So to me, I think it's in the pitcher's best interest to work quickly. I know guys like Jeff Fry's big on social media that he hates these rules and is really adamantly against them. I think it's stupid if it's going to affect the outcome of the game. Like if a guy, I saw where Pete Alonso didn't get back on a 3-2 pitch, he ran and he jogged back to first and did get back there in time and they gave the hitter a strike. That's crazy. I mean, strikes are valuable and giving away bats I think it's nuts. But I do think that speeding the game up isn't going to hurt a little bit. But again, I don't know how you do that without having some strict rules. There has to be no gray area. I get that. But it may be a couple extra seconds. I don't know. I just don't, I haven't, and the base size is crazy to me. I can't believe the bases are bigger. That makes no sense for a lot of reasons too. Like, but there's so many balls that miss first base by like an inch or so. And now that the base is bigger, when the ball hits the base on the corner like that, it'll more than likely be a hit. It'll go off in a crazy direction. So you're just giving more hits. Now it seems like there's more chance to hit the base and go in weird directions. The stolen bases, a lot of plays are bang, bang, and now they're going to be safe. It's weird because typically you don't do things to mess with the history of the game. That's why it's shortening the seasons was always an issue, because home runs and different things are going to not be as much. RBIs won't be as many, all those stats that are so important to baseball.
Sure.
So speeding the game up, I get it. Our society now gets bored in 20 seconds. So I get it. I understand it. Right. Jeff Fry's attitude is like, well, screw them. Well, also pretty soon there won't be any fans left, and it will start to deteriorate as the average age of the fans getting in the 60s. At some point you're going to have to entertain the younger fans. One thing I do agree though is, when I played, if you had a home run off somebody and you celebrated it all, you're going to get hit or the next guy's going to get hit. I think there should be celebration in it more. I like the Latin guys that have a good time. And when you play ball, they're partying, they're having fun, they're showing some personality. I'm like, so what? And if you don't like it that the guy does a 360 at home plate after it's a home run, then don't give up a home run. And granted, if you strike him out and you do your thing, dance all you want, whatever, it's all good. I remember Rodney, the pitcher for Tampa, that wore his hat almost sideways and he'd do that like bow thing. It used to drive people crazy to do that. And it was a little irritating, to be honest. But then I'm like, you see a hitter every now and then, they hit a home run off and they do it too, so it's like, do it back. Don't let them strike you out. Don't get so upset about why you're not supposed to be that emotional. It's supposed to be a fun game. It's like golf, it's not fun if you can't even show any emotion.
Right. And I always I totally agree with you. I think that's kind of players marketing themselves and bringing enjoyment back into the game. I think one of the biggest things baseball has a problem with is marketing. You see, if you look at national commercials with athletes, you're seeing LeBron and Patrick Mahomes and guys like that, but you're not seeing Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, Titi, all these guys, because baseball's trying to clamp down on fun and celebration, when I agree with you. I think they should be allowed to, kind of celebrate.
Absolutely. And I think it also creates rivalries. It creates drama for the fans. It creates interest. Absolutely. Because then there gets to be little chippiness in the game. And I think fans like that. That's one of the things that people like about rivalries, is there is that chippiness. There are, these big rivalries, Red Sox, Yankees, or even in basketball, where it's teams hate LeBron, the visiting teams hate him, the fans hate him. They just want it. There has to be that passion. And if it gets too boring, then there's not a lot of passion. And now you're just having the purists that like the game and people that aren't real. And baseball's a very slow sport, and it's very detailed, and a lot of the nuances are lost on people that don't know the game. And I get that. A lot of people, we talk and they're like, something in baseball will come up and they're like, and I'm like, I don't take it personally if you say you don't like baseball. I don't care. There's a lot of things I don't like. To say it in a rude way, of course, I'd say you don't have to be like that. but I understand that it's a very slow sport, that it doesn't get young people's attention now that everybody's so stimulated with cell phones and with things that happen quickly, and TikTok and 6-second videos. That was the business I was in, was YouTube business. So I understand that the attention span is very, very short for most, teenagers nowadays.
3 more things before I let you go. I want to get into, do you have a Kirby Puckett story for me?
God, there's so many Kirby Puckett stories.
Give me a great Kirby Puckett story, even if there's some profanity, that is A-okay.
Trying to think of one that's like, a lot of them are not suitable for repeating, because there's just so many of them. So fun. He was just such a good guy, and he had such a personality. He was just such a character, and he really loved the game. There's people that play the game, there's people that are good at the game, and there's people that love the game. And he loved playing baseball, and he loved the fans. Of course, he had his bad days, and he would turn it off and on sometimes when the TV was around and the fans. But that's because not everybody can be Kirby all the time, because you sometimes are in a bad mood. But what I really appreciated with him is the way he interacted with the fans, the way he really played the game. He had that crazy personality. He loved to talk. He liked to talk trash. He enjoyed playing. He challenged players. He was just, there's not really any story that I could think of. Obviously the story of him getting hit was a terrible time, and then him having glaucoma was bad, but there was a million good stories of him just on the field doing amazing things, but nothing that I probably would repeat that would be of crazy interest.
Mike Trombley actually was a guest on my show about 4 or 5 years ago, and he shared 2 Kirby stories. He shared one where he got his first big league paycheck, and he was sitting in the chair at the Metrodome in his locker, and he was looking at it, and he couldn't believe he got his paycheck. And Puck walked by him and pulled out a big wad of cash and said, "Hey, Mike, you want me to cash that for you?"
Yeah, that got some national story on social the other day. I saw it, but he would always say, because he liked to play cards, and I play cards too. And Trombley and I were 2 of the best card players who probably ever played baseball. No kidding. We play spades in this game called Pluck, and literally nobody could beat us. We were by far the best 2 teammates ever to ever play cards. I mean, he'll say that him and I were very, very close, and we killed everybody at cards. Anyway, I like to play cards, and we play all these different games from Boo-Ray to Spades to Pluck. And Kirby would always have this bank bag, these first whatever bank in green bag. And he would always say, like, anybody that wanted to play is like, first bank of Puck is open for business. And then he would say, I charge 10% daily compound interest. You borrow $1,000 today, you pay me back $1,100 tomorrow. He was just like that. He always had a lot of cash on him. He'd always have maybe $50,000 cash on him. And he just liked to carry cash, and he liked to play cards, and he liked to he's just a fun person. But yeah, that story with Trombley is absolutely true. He'd say, "Do you have change?" If someone would say, hey Puck, you got change? He said, "I'll change your mind." He would say things like that. He had funny just sayings like that. "I got change. I'll change your damn mind." He was funny.
You mentioned Matt Lawton earlier. He was a guest on my podcast about a month ago, and I asked him for a Kirby story, and he told me about the time that Puck actually asked him to watch his bag of money overnight. And Maddie's reaction, and I asked Matt about it, and he said, "Yeah, I didn't sleep at all that night." He's like, "I was terrified of what would happen." I said, "Did you open it?" He said, "No, I didn't even look in there, man." He said, "I just didn't sleep and just gave it back to Puck when I saw him."
Who knows what was really in it? But
Yeah.
what I will say this, though, because a story along that lines is, when I was a rookie, Kirby was like, he had this huge Louis Vuitton bag, like a big one. It was like a duffel bag, but it was huge. And he came up to me on our first road trip, and he said, "See this bag? You carry this bag everywhere you go. Everywhere I go, I want to see you carrying this bag behind me. And I don't ever want to see you not with my bag, and you carry it at all times. When I turn around, it better be right there." And I don't know if he put rolls of quarters in this just to mess with me, but the bag literally weighed like 100 pounds. It was the heaviest bag, and I had to carry this thing. Back then, you had to wear suits, even in the summertime when it was hot. So I'm carrying my backpack, his freaking 100-pound Louis Vuitton bag with quarters or whatever he put in there to mess with me. And everywhere for the whole season, regardless, I had to carry that thing. Then I had to carry it to his room. I mean, literally everywhere he went, I had to carry it. And it was more of like a initiation thing. Like if he didn't do that to you, I'd be more concerned about it than if he did, because that means he doesn't care. He didn't want to make you feel like you're part of the team. So all the things he did, all these things that he did to these players, he did because he wanted them to feel like part of the team.
Let's talk real quick before I let you go. Let's talk about Dana White and the UFC. You mentioned earlier in the show you've been friends with Dana since you guys who are 10 years old. You guys must be like brothers. Obviously, you've been on some of his podcasts and some of his videos and stuff. Can you tell me what's the biggest misconception that the media or average fans have about Dana White?
I think they think that he's like a little bit maybe meaner or tougher or rougher than he is, because he's very tough business person. He's very determined. He loves to be challenged. He loves to be. I've never seen somebody with more determination. You tell somebody they can't do something, and that you might as well just, if you don't want him to do it, don't tell him he can't do it, because he'll do it. He's that determined, and he's very passionate. But he's also one of the most generous people you ever meet. He helps more people than you could even imagine. He does so many things for people that the media never hears about. He donates money. He gives people. He's the best tipper that I've ever been around by a million times more than he's so generous with his money. And one example that I'll give you is there was it was either a Walmart or a Target in Hawaii, and there was a Samoan girl that was working, that she was like, I don't know if she was security or she was a checkout girl. I think she might have been security. And someone had stole, like, I think they were trying to steal a TV, and they were trying to get out the door, and she was like, boom, like knocking him back in the store and holding him down and hitting him. And went viral, and she lost her job over that. So Dana had his people get a hold of her, flew her husband, and I think she might've been married and had a child, flew them to Vegas, got them a place, got them a job as security at the UFC headquarters. She still works there today, and paid for everything to completely help her redo her life. Because he's like, people like that shouldn't be punished for trying to do the right thing, even though their policy is don't try to stop shoplifters. She was trying to do the right thing, and she cared about her company. And a lot of people are like, it's not your TV, why do you care? But she just cared because it was the right thing to do. So he's done many things like that. So many times he's met people that are in a certain way or struggling a little bit, and he's helped them, or people that he's met that have a talent of some sort, and then he's put them on his social media to help them. I can't say enough nice things about him. So I think a lot of the misconception about him is that he's not as good a person. I think people think he's a good person, is so generous as he is, and how much he does for charities and to help people. It's really, he's just looked at this like hard-nosed guy that doesn't care and underpays his fighters or whatever, people will say about him, that he's rough and aggressive, and he is all of those things, but not in a bad way.
I'm sure you probably talk to him on an almost daily basis. I'm a fan of pro wrestling. It's a form of entertainment that I like. Endeavor, the company that owns UFC, actually recently purchased WWE. Dana White and Vince McMahon are probably the two most famous and hard-nosed entertainment figures in that. Do you think Dana and Vince, if they have to, are going to be able to work together really well to make Endeavor and WWE UFC prosper?
Actually, I work out with them every day that I'm in Vegas. I'm here a lot, but I'm also in Laguna Beach quite a bit. He didn't even really talk about it a whole lot. It was like, he's going to run WWE, Dana's going to run UFC, and they're not going to intermingle in each other's business. It's really separate entities as far as runs what. It really is just a bigger thing for Endeavor to acquire these two assets, and it's good for the overall health of the company, and it made the value of UFC go up even more. But I think he's not concerned like that. He's really only concerned about what he can control and what he can do. And he'll say, like, you know what, my whole day is I'm putting out fires. That's all he does all day, because he's dealing with fighters and fighters' personalities and their agents and just things. He's got a lot of personalities, a lot of people to take care of, a lot of things go wrong behind the scenes with injuries and with fights that fall apart. And he's constantly just putting out fires. That's what he does all day. And he has one of his craziest traits is he's able to compartmentalize issues better than anybody. Like something that I would see come across this plate that's devastating, like for business or something, I'm like, wow, he just handled that and like turned away from it and went on to the next thing like it never happened, and didn't bring it up again and just dealt with it. And he's like, wow, that's a quality that someone in his position would have to have, because you can't be too sensitive or too like carry things with you too much. You got to be able to let things go, and he's very good at that.
He also has a sense of humor. You were on one of his video blogs and you had forgotten your passport trying to get into Canada. And when he was asked about it, he said that he joked that you, despite having played for the Toronto Blue Jays, had not realized that Toronto was not in the United States.
Yeah, you know, it's really funny when you're the editor and producer of your own vlog that you can cut things, make things, you carve your own narrative, because it's always never going to be my side of the story. So I understood that. He doesn't do those vlogs like he used to in the very beginning. We were on those all the time, super competitive over everything. But
Right.
what really is the truth of what happened is he flies private. I am always one of those people from Tom Kelly days that if you're an hour early, you're late. So the plane was leaving, say, at 4 o'clock, and I got there at 2 o'clock. And I had said to his flight attendant, who's been there forever, Kayhow, I said, "Oh man, I left my passport in my house." And I said, "I can go get it." And she's like, "Well, let me see." The pilot has got, because I've flown so many times with him. He's like, "Oh, he's got a copy of your passport." And then she went to the pilot and said, "Is that fine?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's cool." And I said, "I can go get it." And she's like, "No, don't worry, it's all good." So then as soon as we get in the air, then I guess the tower talked about me landing. They're like, "It's not a problem getting into Toronto, but it will be a problem because we were going from Toronto to New York for another flight after that, or for some business he had to do, that the United States was not going to let me back in without the physical passport." That's when then he decided to make this blog. And of course, he got a chance to mess with me with no defense. But what he
Right.
was doing more was, and if you remember this, is my picture on that passport was bad. I had long
Yeah.
hair, and he's like holding it up, and he's like, "Would you let this guy in your country? Really?" He's like, "No wonder they won't let you." He's just, busting balls. But we're like that. We both
Right.
have skin, and we've known each other. Like I said, we've been through thick and thin together, and if you can't joke around with your friends, who can you joke around with? But it does suck that he has the medium to where he can edit things any way he wants and cut out any. So when we competed, he never seemed to lose, because anytime he did, that never made the cut. So
Right.
all good.
Before I let you go, I want to do a quick word association. I do it with all my guests. Twins fans, I want you to give me a 3 to 5 words or a sentence about whatever player or I throw out at you from your time with the Twins. Sound good?
Sure.
All right, let's start with you. You mentioned him a lot. Let's start with him. PK.
TK, hard nosed, cigar smoking, dog racing, grumpy old man,
Plumolitor.
hardworking, classy guy, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Terry Ryan.
Very, very schooled, very, very hard nosed, very smart, non-emotional.
Puckett.
Happiest guy on the earth. Just a guy that make you smile, genuine person, one of the most talented players you'll ever see.
Cal Ripken Jr.
Hard nosed, toughest guy around. One of the strongest people that one of the things people don't understand is he was like one of the strongest guys. Like he would wrestle some really big, strong guys, and he was one of the strongest, like naturally strong guys. I don't think he lifted a whole lot, but he was just one of those really strong guys.
Brad Radke.
Calm, cool, collected. His nickname was Cool Breeze. I think that was what, I don't know if it was Molly that called him that, or Kirby or somebody, that was his nickname. But just a cool as a cucumber, and no emotions. You never knew if he had a freaking pulse, because he never got, you see, just glove up, pitch, never smile. You never get any emotion out of him.
Matt Lawton.
Matt Lawton, Showtime. Him and I were really, really good friends. His nickname was Bussy, because he was on the golf cart one time and he was like, "I'm driving the bus." It just became a nickname we had to each other, but we were really tight. And he just a super freaking classy guy. I really like Matt. He really, he loved to, if he hit a home run off you, he was like, "I'm going to celebrate. I don't care what happens. I'm going to enjoy strike me out then if you don't want me hitting a home run off you." But yeah, that's more than 3 words. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It could be a sentence too. That's a LaTroy Hawkins.
LaTroy, another just steady guy. I mean, the guy played 20 years. If he started with starting pitcher, fine. Relief, fine. Just he's one of those guys, like he's like a loyal friend. You could count on him through thick and thin.
Rod Carew, Tony Oliva.
Tony Oliva was like a father figure to me. When I played in Guasave and winter ball, he was the coach, but he was one of the worst hitting instructors I've ever had in my entire life. He would say, "Marty," in his accent, "just stand on top of the plate. And when they throw you inside, just inside out it and hit it to left field for a base hit." I'm like, That's the worst hitting advice I've ever heard, because you can do that. And you're one person on the planet that could do that. Maybe Rod Carew. You should never tell anybody to hit that way. But he was such a nice guy. Tony, he was really one of the nicest guys. Rod Carew, I didn't really know that well. So just to
Okay.
know, just one of the greatest players ever. And I've heard nothing but nice things about him.
What about Kent Herbeck? I know he was a little bit before your time with the Twins, but do you have any Kent Herbeck?
He reminds me of like a truck driver, beer drinking truck driver. He was always a fisherman, outdoors. Yeah. He was super cool too. He come in the clubhouse a lot. He was always very polite and nice to me. Just like he's like the big brother that would rough you up and beat you up a little bit, because he may look like he's out of shape, but that's a strong big guy. Right. Yeah, and he's a lot tougher than I think people think. But he was actually, I think, got a little softer in his older age. Not his old age, but when he was 40 or so, when I saw him around, he turned into a real nice guy.
Jock Jones.
Great. Another really loyal friend of mine. Again, guy you could count on thick and thin, very religious. Guy never drank a drink in his life, just as a very classy dude, never gets in trouble, lives his life the way, he's the son every mom wishes that they had, to be honest. That's a good way to describe him.
Let's finish up with Eddie Guardado. I think he's a good one to finish up with. Give me your thoughts on Eddie G.
Everyday Eddie. No, I always say he's TK's son, because he would start talking. The older he got, the more he started repeating these TK-isms. It's hilarious. He's smoking cigars like TK. I'm like, we're gonna have to check to your DNA. Maybe your TK is a legitimate son. Yeah, I talk to Eddie all the time. We talk quite a bit. He's coming to my golf tournament too, like I said. So yeah, he's another dude that I could count on him through anything. If I needed him and really needed him, he'd be there. And these few guys from the Twins I could count on like that. And then they know they could count on me to be there for them.
When you think of Marty Cordova and the Minnesota Twins, or even just the Minnesota Twins, when you think of the Minnesota Twins, what's the one thing that most sticks out in your mind?
I guess a few things. It's always the small market. Teams that always tried to play the game the right way. They had to do all the little things right. And it was always TK's way. He preached that way always, is you had to do the little things right, because you didn't have that talent that you were going up against. Talent can make some mistakes or mental mistakes and make up for it. But when you're not as talented, you have to do every little thing right, and your margin of error is less. And that's how it's always been really with the Twins, is they had to do every little thing right, or they end up getting beat. And in baseball and in sports in general, you're always like, man, it's that one little thing. But it's weird, because that one little thing always happens in the favor of the good teams. They always do that one little thing right. You're like, well, they're just doing that one little thing. Like in football, there's just that one play here and there. But the good teams always are doing that one little play here and there. And the bad teams are always going, like the Raiders, for example, they were 7-11 or whatever they were last year. They should have been at least the opposite. But they kept making these little mistakes at the end of games, these dumb mental mistake or one play here and there. And they easily could have, they should have won opposite number of wins and losses. But that's what separates good teams from bad teams. And you're just like, why? Why does that happen? Is it the coaching? Is it the makeup of the players? I think it's a combination of both coaching, but it's also the players' makeup. There's just guys that are winners and guys that are talented, and there's guys that just don't really know how to win. And that's always been a big thing that was preached with the Twins, is you got to learn how to win, because not everybody knows how to put the teams away or to have that winning blow that the good players do.
If you were going to say one thing to Twins fans, either from when you played or now, what would your message to Twins fans be?
I think that my message would be, for me personally, is I wish I'd played better. I mean, nobody feels worse about my career the way it was with the Twins than me, because it started out very promising and then ended not great. I think Twins fans have to be a little patient with the teams when you're competing with the payroll that's in the lower half of the market. The rest of MLB, it's hard. It's hard because then you don't have a lot of error, your margin of error. Your players all have to come through. So it's tough, because everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to win. And I know the fans want the Twins to win, but the players want to win a lot more than the fans want them to win. I can promise you that. So I think if I'd say to any fan in general, is try to understand, and I'm not trying to take passion away from fans at all, is that whenever you think a player doesn't care, or that you're pissed that he didn't do well, I promise you he's way more upset with himself than you could ever be at him.
And it's funny that you mentioned the small market thing, because that has always kind of been the Twins thing. The thing in Minnesota has always been kind of cheap poll ads from the fan base because they don't sign players. And then they went out and signed Correa this offseason to a $200 million deal. And they just re-signed Pablo Lopez to one of the biggest extensions in team history for $73 million a year. So, but yeah, I mean, the Twins notoriously have kind of been that small market team. Do you think that having those bigger contracts is something that's going to kind of help change that perception maybe nationally, that like, hey, star players do want to come here and play, or is it just about whether you win or not?
It has a lot to do with both, because nobody wants to go to a team and lose. And especially if you're going to be the one or two players that make all the money, then all of the pressures on you, and any failure, they blame you. So it is hard. But again, it takes more than two players to make a team. So
Yeah.
and that's what you're up against, a team that has, out of their 25 players, they have 12 that are on multi-year huge contracts like that, as opposed to two. It's just hard to compete. So all of it, really, it's similar like in football and other sport, especially football. Your quarterback, if he's on a rookie contract and he's making $3 or $4 million a year, well, that's a big difference than when he's not on his rookie contract and he makes 40, because you could spend $37 million on other position players that are going to completely make your team better. So it's like that. It's like that with like, remember back Cleveland Indians when I played.
Mhm.
For me a little bit, they'd locked up all these young guys to these 8-year deals, Tome, Manny Ramirez, these guys. So they had them at such cheap prices that when they should have been making 10 million, they were making 4. It enabled them to go out and get free agents and fill in these positions. And that's the only way you can really compete, unless you have an unlimited payroll. But then, not to ramble, but look at the Yankees. I think it was like 9 years in a row they didn't do well at all, and they had the highest payrolls, and they were just paying people, and that isn't always the answer as well.
Right. Before I let you go, I always like to give the last minute or so of the conversation to my guests to promote, plug, or talk about anything they have coming up. You mentioned a golf tournament. Do you have anything else you want to promote? Tell people about the golf tournament.
Yeah, I'm on the board of the United Way, and they have a golf tournament every year. And coming out of COVID, they never really had anybody that was like that. It was their tournament, so they asked if I wanted to do it, and I'm like, I've never done that before, but I'll be happy to do this. So this is the first year of me doing this. It's just a 1-day event, and it's mostly like local sponsors, nothing bigger than that. And there's gonna be about 5 or 6 players out there. Maybe this will grow each year. I'm not certain if we'll be doing it next year or not. Hopefully I will, and that it'll continue to grow with more players. But a lot of players have tournaments, and there's not everybody can go. So it's it's a lot of competition as far as people's times. They have families and friends and things like that. I just sold my 2 businesses, as I told you. So I'm really now just working on passion projects, trying to help people, anybody that's in need of going through anything. I'd be more than happy to help people out that are dealing with personal issues and struggling in life, because I've been through a lot of ups and downs in my life. So that's kind of where I'm at now, is just trying to give back to society and do things. I've had enough time of focusing on myself. Now I kind of want to help other people best I can.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Marty Cordova, former 1995 Minnesota Twins AL Rookie of the Year, and a personal favorite of mine growing up. I cannot thank you enough for your generosity in giving us some time. We had a couple of glitches, but we got through it. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you being cool, and I'll tell Lawton you said hi.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Talk to you
Thanks.
soon.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, everybody, that was Marty Cordova. Stay tuned for next week's show about the show. We'll see you down the road in podcast land.